the actual water cooler, talking to somebody, one of my colleagues, this English guy. And I was reminiscing because it was supposed to be summer. Right? This was a London summer. We used to drive from Melbourne to Perth every Christmas. And he said, oh yeah, how far's that? About 3 days. And I literally could have picked his jaw up off the floor. He said, you what? I said, yeah, that was our family's idea of fun. And that's what you did in the 70s. You did these drives and you didn't worry about it. And we just rolled down the windows for air conditioning. He couldn't quite believe it. But, you know, if you drive for 3 days out of London, you're in Moscow or something. So it got me thinking about road trips again. And he said to me, why don't you do a road trip? And I'd already been on the road from Melbourne for 18 months at this point. So, but I'd gotten kind of stuck in the whole London rut thing, working, earning some good pounds, and then I thought, no, you know what, it's summer. I'm here, I'm a backpacker, I'm supposed to be travelling. So I just started to devise this crazy road trip. And I thought, I wonder how far I can go from London overland. So except for the bit jumping into mainland Europe, I'm literally not going to get on a plane or a boat. I want to go overland as far as I can. And I put it out to all my friends, you know, we were all about who could find the craziest way to travel, who could have the most ridiculous experiences, you know, and we'd all sit around over a beer at the pub and talk about this stuff. So I put it out there, I said, who wants to come as far as they can with me overland? And they all thought I was nuts. They're like, what? What are you doing? You've been working in London now, you can afford a plane, Joe, right? And I'm like, no, that's not the point. So I had to advertise, and there was this magazine called the TNT magazine, and anyone who ever lived and backpacked and worked in London would know this magazine. It's where there were jobs advertised, it's where there were places for rent, it's where the best pubs were, etc., etc. And in this magazine, I thought, you know what, I'm going to advertise for a travel partner. I'm going to say, I'm doing this crazy thing, do you want to come? And I got some really interesting responses, but one of which was an Irish guy called Brian. When we met, I could only understand probably half of what he was saying, but he was really, really cool, and he had this barbed wire tattooed around his bicep, and I thought that was pretty cool. So I said, cool, come with me. You look like a good guy. I'm not going to fall in love with you, right? That's pretty clear. So you'd be a great travel partner. So we organised it, and what we ended up doing was going from London through Eastern Europe and then up to St. Petersburg. And the reason, I hadn't really planned on Russia, but the reason we got there was because, as happens, on a Friday night at the pub, I met an Aussie who was married to a Russian girl who had set up this awesome travel company. And the travel company was getting Aussies and Kiwis into Russia. So remember, this is the mid-90s, so not a lot of people travelled to Russia. You had to have very special visas. And I thought, you know what? That sounds like a good place to go. So we popped that on the list. And we got to St. Petersburg, and you had to stay with families. So the whole USSR part of our trip, we had to actually stay with family, because they sort of sponsor you into the country. So St. Petersburg, then we hopped on the Trans-Siberian Railway, got to Moscow, and we actually took it all the way to Beijing. It's the most incredible experience. Just before we left, I shaved my hair. And I shaved it because, as I said, it was really, really long, and for 10 days I was going to have a sink that big to wash my entire body in. And I didn't want to have to be dealing with dreadlocks. So we looked at a right pair, and we got to Ulaanbaatar, which is the capital of Mongolia. And we were staying with this family. And there was a teenage boy who was about 17 and a young girl who was about 12. When I was at school, I learnt German. When I was at uni, I learnt French, but Mongolian was never on my language list. They never spoke a word of English, And so it was stinking hot, and we were inside this tiny, real Cold War Soviet Union apartment, no air conditioning, and we were there for about 2 days, and we'd done the one site that there is to see in Ulaanbaatar, and we were sort of sitting around, and I was getting really uncomfortable because the teenage son was kind of leering most of the time. And I was getting a little bit uncomfortable. I was like, I don't know, we need to get out of here, but I don't really know how or where. And so we kind of had to stay our days there. Anyway, we were sitting there and we had one night to go. And we kind of not really enjoyed our time as such in that part because there wasn't a lot to do and there was no connection between us and the family. We didn't speak their language, they didn't speak ours, there was nothing to look at, everything was kind of beige. And we were really getting quite restless. Just as I was really about to punch the teenage son in the nose, the daughter got up. She went to the piano, which was the prized possession of this family. She sat down at the piano and she played the Cranberries song Zombie. Now, she didn't speak a word of English, but she sang and played that song note and word perfect. In my Walkman was the Cranberries tape. She'd seen that I'd been playing them, so that was the summer that that song was released. I had played that song the whole way through our trip. And at that moment that she sat down, I still get goosebumps thinking about it, we connected. She saw that it was important to me, and I was able to relate to her in a way that we hadn't for the last 48 hours. And what was reinforced to me at that point in time, which I'd always known because I'd always been a student of language and literature, was that without a shared language, there is no connection. Now, the shared language doesn't have to be a spoken language. It could be the language of visual art, or photography, or music, or even dance, because they transcend verbal language. But without a shared language, there is no connection. And so what I want to discuss with you today is this idea of a shared language and storytelling through your marketing for your businesses. Because without story and language, you're just another balance sheet. You're just another bunch of words on a page that mean very little. So it's about finding your own language, first and foremost, your business's language, which for small businesses is often the language of the director or the owner. And once you understand and really harness that language, it's about sharing that language in a way that's meaningful to people so that they can connect with it, so that they can do something with it, and so that they buy into what you're on about. Now, not everybody, and Ashley quite rightly said this, we can't help everybody, nor should you want to. There is not enough hours in a week or time in a lifetime to help everybody. So you need to only help the people who are willing to be helped, ready to be helped, and who are like-minded. Yeah, they don't have to be like you, but they need to be like-minded. There needs to be some shared values, some commonality. Because I'm not going to lay down and get a massage by you if I don't like you, if I think you're creepy. I don't want you delving into my accounts if I think you're a shonk. Right? So I need to find out who my people are, and you need to be comfortable that I'm your kind of person before anything can happen. But that shared language and that storytelling is the best way to do that. So I'm going to talk you through a few things about storytelling. Why am I here? I really want you to stand out. I really want you to help your business stand out. You know, how many wellness therapists are there on the peninsula? How many accountants are there? How many marketing consultants are there? There's hundreds of us. So what is going to make you stand out above the pack? How are you going to swim faster and further but without feeling like you're constantly racing? Really, really important to find a way to stand out that feels comfortable for you, feels like your best pair of old jeans, yeah? Now, who am I? I'm a daughter. I'm a sister. I'm a wife. I'm a mum to these crazy monkeys. I'm part of the best mothers group on the Mornington Peninsula. You may have seen this in the news recently. I'm a crazy cat lady and a best friend. I'm a major Hawks supporter, and I'm a dance mum, and I love the beach, and I love shoes, and I love to travel. And I'm also a volunteer. This is the Pencils community, which is a really great group. Look them up if you don't know about them. I'm also a board member on a foundation called the Attitude Books Foundation, which is amazing. Look that up too. And before I ran my own business, I worked for all of these major brands. I had a serious corporate life beforehand. Most recent one before I started my business was realestate.com.au, and I worked for them for 10 years. I now run a coaching business, and I run retreats, so I take a small group of people away on really luxury weekends, and I help them to get their big major writing projects done. I do book coaching, so I help people bring their books to life. And that's my book in the State Library, so I'm an author as well, and that was like a really cool day. And I love a radio gig. I laugh a lot. I sometimes get shit wrong, and I sometimes get it right. So that's who I am, and that's why I'm here to help you guys, because I think I know a little bit about stories. Now, some of the questions that you might have about your marketing, what are they? Can someone throw them up? What are the big challenges that you have around your business marketing? Anybody?
I think a lot of the stuff we've covered today is about listening to the customers and what matters to them. So talking about yourself, how do you make it relevant?
Yeah,
or
sure.
make them want to be interested.
Yeah, absolutely, and we'll talk about that. I think some of the biggest questions, because I know they're big questions for me too, are these, how do I find new clients? Like, how do I find them? I've got a low marketing spend. Most of us have, right? A low marketing budget. So what do we do to maximise our dollars? How do I get really paid well for my expertise? I don't want to drop my pants just because you think I'm not worth it. How do I showcase my uniqueness? So how do I talk about myself but don't sound like a tosser? How do I attract great staff? If your business is growing, how do you get people to come into your business that are like you? And how do you keep growing? If that's what you want. Not everybody wants to keep growing. Some people are really comfortable where they're at. So I stress that. And I was saying to my husband before we were sitting up there when Shannon was talking about, all these gross profit margins and this and that. And I'm like, oh, thank God I don't have products or people to worry about. Like, I'm really comfortable being where I'm at. So not everyone wants to, but it's about how do you grow your bottom line with what you've got. And I think the answer is in the stories. I think the answer to all of that is in the stories that we use to really market ourselves. This is a really cool project I want to just highlight to you because it really, really illustrates this point that narrative or storytelling can actually transform anything. Anything as insignificant as a cup of coffee or a gadget into something that's really, really significant. There was this great two guys, they wanted to do this sort of anthropological literary study. It was done in 2009 in the US, and what they did was they went to op shops and they bought 200 items for no more than $1.25 each. Right, so they spent about $200 roughly. What they did was they put it out to a whole bunch of authors and writers, and they said, can you write a story for this object? And then what they did was they put them all up on eBay. So instead of a description, they put the story up with the item, and they wanted to see whether they could turn an insignificant sort of little knick-knack into something significant, using the theory that significance is objective and was based around sort of monetary value for this piece. They turned $200 worth of rubbish into over $4,000 worth of sales. And the stories are directly responsible for that. They then went on and did it another couple of times, and they raised so much money for literary organisations. It was extraordinary. And it was just really great proof that a story can sell anything. A story can really sell anything if it's good enough, if it's meaningful enough, and if it touches the hearts of the people who want to be touched. And that's really the point. Why does storytelling work? Because there's a few scientific reasons, but one of the big ones is this idea of neural coupling. So what happens is that when I hear a story or read a story, I turn that situation into my own. And I step into that story and I think, oh yeah, that's me, that's me, that's me. And I start to take that on. So then it has a much bigger effect on me. The other thing that happens is mirroring. So listening here at the moment, you're all listening to me tell stories, and your brain activity is all similar. And it's also similar to mine. So if I'm really up and I'm really, really excited, you're getting excited too. Or if I'm really chilled, so is yours. The other thing that happens is that dopamine is produced. Yeah? And what that does is it means that you remember things with much greater accuracy. So if I put up a spreadsheet and start talking about that, you're all just going to go, oh my God, right? Except for maybe Shannon, because she likes spreadsheets. But, you know, you're not going to remember it. But if I tell you a story, I guarantee you'll go home and tomorrow you'll remember bits and pieces from today, but I reckon you'll remember, and you might even go and put the Cranberries zombie song on, right? You will. And what that does is remind you of me and maybe something that I said, okay? So that's what the dopamine does. And the last thing that's going on is cortex activity absolutely gets elevated. When there's emotionally charged stories, your brain activity goes through the roof. And that's great. That's great for your memory. So what actually is business storytelling? All it is using a personal story and attaching it to a message of value. Attaching it to a business message so that people remember it. Because if I give you facts and figures, you won't remember them. You will remember the stories, however. And you know what? It's not a new idea. And lots of people are on the bandwagon now. I started my business 8 years ago talking about this stuff, but everybody now is a storytelling marketer. Doesn't worry me, there's room for all of us. But storytelling is really ancient. For thousands of years of humanity, people used stories to pass on information. Right? They sat around the campfire or they wrote on the cave walls. That's how stories were passed on. And the winning stories were those that got shared the most. They were the most meaningful and they got shared the most. There's only a chunk of time, about 100 years in the middle, recent time, which is called the broadcast era. And the broadcast era is when broadsheet news that had the most money, right? The stories that got shared the most were those that were only shared because I had more time on air, I had a bigger ad in the paper, and my voice could be heard more often. So they weren't necessarily the best stories, but rather just the loudest stories. Thankfully, we've come back now into an era where we are all publishers, thank you to the internet and social media. So now we've come back sort of full circle to a point where stories now are being shared by all of us, or can be, and the best stories are being shared, again, but via social networks, virtual social networks instead of campfires. So this is not a new idea. The brain has evolved somewhat, but we haven't evolved that much. Yeah, all that same brain activity is still going on. So effective storytelling really can change opinions. And look, you only have to look back in recent history to some of the world's greatest orators to understand how much, storytelling can affect people's opinions. Hitler's a perfect example, unfortunately, but he changed an entire generation by telling stories about people. Yeah, very, very powerful. Stories can also inspire us to achieve things that we've never achieved before. How many people stories, and social storytelling is amazing at the moment. There's a lot of incredible social enterprises out there that just hang their hats on stories. Big question, how do you know how much to share? How do you know what to share? And we've all seen the oversharers on Facebook, right? We've all seen them. Scary. I'm going to share with you 6 types of stories, sort of 6 categories of stories that you can share. The first one is the who I am story. So this is where you get to hear about me. And the reason that you hear about me is because I'm demonstrating expertise, I'm demonstrating value, I'm letting you know I'm someone you can trust. And that's all very important. So there is no problem talking about yourself if you align it with the value that you offer to your people. Okay, and if you know that it's something that they need to hear. So you can talk about your achievements, you can talk about your failures, you can talk about your evolution and where you've come to.
How much, when you say failures,
Yep.
do you do that without?
Well, you turn it around and you do it as a lesson. So just as Ashley did about that client that she lost, that's a failure in her world realistically, but she's turned it around and used it as a lesson to be able to say, well, you know what, that was then, this is now, and I'm still on the game. Yeah? So it's actually a great way of demonstrating. You can also use a failure of yours with a client, and maybe that was 6 years ago, but you've done all this extra study since, or all this extra practice, so now you're doing X, Y, Z. Yeah? The next ones are the why am I here? So this is where you're building trust. I'm here to help you, and this is going to be a mutually agreeable and beneficial relationship. So you're telling your audience and inviting them to understand why you're here to help them. The third one are the teaching stories, and this is what we see most of. So this is where people are doing the 5 top tips too. Yeah, so these are the sort of teaching stories. But these are equally valid, just don't spend your entire marketing life here. Okay? So, because you can give away too much sometimes. But, really, really great to be able to demonstrate value by virtue of frozen. Ah, we're frozen. Aaron, yeah.
The internet when it drops out near before the channel.
Ah, okay. I don't like that. Number 4, while we're getting that fixed, is vision stories. So vision stories are sort of inspirational stories. These are the inspirational, aspirational stuff. So this again is where you can share your client's successes. So not your own, but your client's successes. And you can talk about if you do this, or if you follow these steps, or if you take this extra piece of information on board, if you come along with me, you can get to here. So those are the inspirational and vision stories. No luck? No. Okay. Can you jump out of it off there?
Yeah,
Oh, golly. Alright. Sorry, guys. Jump out. Try and try my laptop. Even if we can't get it back up here. Sorry. Sorry, guys. Just for a second. There's someone got a printer around though, that's all. Does anyone have any questions so far about this sort of stuff, about this kind of how much to share or what to share within these sorts of teaching or vision or who I am stories?
I always worry that I'm talking too much to a client, because
Okay.
I always want to rein it, tell them what it is we're here for and what we're doing and what we can do for them, but then how do you set your time in your head? You know what I mean?
Do you mean in an actual physical conversation?
Yeah,
right, yes, sure. Again, back to sort of what Ashley was talking about with open questions, I would have a certain style of pitch, if you like. I'd have a couple of minutes where you're able to talk about what you're doing, and then I'd be turning the conversation around so it's back to what they are after. But when I'm talking about this sort of stuff, I'm talking more about creating the marketing pieces that you're putting out there. So whether it's social media posts, whether it's blogging, whether it's your email marketing, whether it's information on your website, the consistent conversations that you're having through your marketing need to have your customer at the centre of them, but you're allowed to talk about yourself in relation to that customer. And you can talk about your own failures or successes in relation to the value that you offer to your customers. And it just takes a bit of practice to start, to get those flowing really nicely. And we'll talk a bit about story structure in a minute, but you will start to get a sense of how much is too much. And, on Facebook, you're not going to write this much. A couple of paragraphs. On Instagram, a couple of sentences. Email marketing, world's your oyster. It's your conversation with people who've said, yes, I want to hear from you. So you have a much bigger opportunity of a longer conversation in email marketing. On your website, short pieces. In your blog, it's like your online diary. You can write whatever you like. So different platforms require different amounts from you, but you can, if you're clever at it, tell a story in a tweet. Which is like 140 characters. You can tell a whole story in one sentence, just as you could take, 40,000 words to tell a story. Yeah? Right, so it's the medium requires different amounts of massaging to get the story out, but the structure remains the same. Does that make sense? Yeah? Cool. Yeah, alright. So I'll just jump on here. Looks like we're going to lose vision, but that's okay. I'll just jump on and do it from here. So number 5 was values in action story, and this is where you need to start re-emphasising the positive values that you uphold and your business upholds, in the hope that the recipients are also upholding those values. You're also asking them to think about the negative emotions and actions and things that you perceive as negative, so that they don't bring those to the party. Okay, and we've all worked with people who we probably shouldn't have. In the early days of business, we all go, yes, 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 I'll do that for you, and then you regret it. And the most empowering day of my business life was saying no to a $10,000 coaching client. And I really, really wanted that money. I really wanted that money. And I said no, because I did not want him in my studio for 3 months. I knew I could help him. I knew I could help him get where he needed to go, but I just did not want to see him in my studio for 3 months. We just didn't share the same vibe. So, you need to be able to tell stories that allow people to understand what's important to you. My values are all about family and freedom and flexibility and joy, and I swear a little, and I laugh a lot, and I muck around, but I get the job done. And I'm a real word nerd, and I want people to appreciate that. And, I need you to be flexible, but I also have firm boundaries around work time and family time. And I like to work with people who are the same. I don't want you calling me at 8 o'clock at night with your story about whatever. No, thank you. I don't want you turning up late though. And I don't want you to pay my invoice late. So, these are the things that you need to let your people know, but you don't go out on Facebook and go, right, all you people out there, I don't want anyone to contact me who doesn't pay their invoice on time. Like, you don't be as overt as that, of course. But through the stories that you tell, you let people know who you want to work with and who you don't. And that's really, really important. Okay. Number 6, the final one, is the I know what you're thinking stories. And this is where you answer the objections up front. Again, very similar to what Ashley was talking about on the phone. is in your writing of your content, whether it be Facebook posts or blogs, answer the objections up front. I know that you think writing blogs won't work for your business. I know you think you don't have time to keep writing for your business. I know you think it's a waste of time. I hear this stuff all the time. I don't have time, I don't have the inspiration, I don't know how. So I open blogs and say, I know you think blogs are a waste of time. Let me tell you why they're not. Okay, so answer the objection up front and then you've moved on. You've already moved past that hurdle. And then you have an opportunity to embed why you think what you think. Now, those are the sorts of stories that I think you should share, those sorts of 6 stories. Within those, of course, there's lots and lots of different types, but those are the main categories. But how do you actually put a story together? I like to think of stories as a bit of a recipe. I'm a bit of a cook. Like to think of them as a recipe, and there's secret ingredients within those stories. The secret ingredients basically come down to the car approach. So there's context, and there's action, and there's results. So there's 3 things have to happen in every story for it to be effective, if you like. So let's have a look at those. I'm sorry you can't see them because it's a really cool graph here. Actually not a graph, it's just circles. So context. Who's the main character of the story? Sometimes the main character is an idea, not an actual person, and that's cool. That's okay. But who or what is the main character of the story? Where is it happening? So what's the setting? Why is it happening? What are they hoping for? That's all the context of your story. The next ingredient is the action. Okay, so what is that person doing next? How do they move on? How do they get from this fork in the road to that result? So in any good story, you will have a hero's journey, yeah? Any good fictional piece of writing is written like this, but so are the best blogs and tweets and copywriting. You know, as a person who starts here, in the particular context, they come round, something happens, there's an initialising incident, they can choose this way or that way, they choose to come round here, oh my God, are they going to die or are they going to be the hero? They make that choice and they come out of that unknown world as a new person. They've got some new context, they've got new ideas, they've got new thoughts, and they take that back to their own world, back to their known world. And then it starts again, and that goes round and round and round. So the action, oh look, we have vision, there it is. That one, yep. Wow, thank you, sir. I love it. Oh, look, now we've got 2 on a page. This is exciting. 1 here and 2 there. That's all right. That's okay. Thank you. So what are the steps that were taken and why were they important? That's that action. And then the third ingredient is the results. So is it a comedy or a tragedy? You know, were they happy? Were they sad? Did it work out? What was their fate? With any good story, you need to make it manageable. I know you're not all writers. I know you're not all marketers. That's why people like me exist. But I do strongly believe that small business owners have to take control of their marketing. I started my business as a copywriting business, and I still do maybe 20% of my business is copywriting. But for the most part, I teach people how to do this stuff for themselves. Why? A, it's more sustainable. Much more leverageable for me. I can do this to a dozen of you, or I can do this one-on-one. Yeah? And the other thing is that you are the only ones who have the voice of your business. I know how to really cleverly interview people to get that out of them and to draw it out so that I can do copywriting for a business. But I'm probably only ever going to get to 95%. I'm never going to have that little special ingredient, which is you. You are the business. You have the language of that business. You have the tone and the intonation, and I can teach that stuff. I can teach you how to recognise it and how to use it in your business. But if you're asking someone else to do the writing for you, it's almost impossible for them to be an exact replica of you. So learning how to do this for yourselves is super duper important, because you have to produce content for your business every day, every week, every month. Whether it's small, whether it's large, you have to do it. Making it manageable is super important. Turn one long piece of content into lots and lots and lots of smaller messages for social media. It's called repurposing. And in your goodie bags, you're going to get, among other things, there's a bookmark of mine which has got a repurposing masterclass video that you can download and watch. And it teaches you how to turn a blog, say an 800-word piece of content, into about 20 different pieces of marketing content. So have a look at that. But mostly, what's the goal is important, and who is the audience, yeah? What do they need to know? What do they already know? And what's relevant to them? Don't be under the illusion that you talking about yourself is not relevant to them, because it is. Everybody checks everybody out well before they give you the phone call and say, hey, can you help me? And you won't even know. Because, and that's why I do what I do, and I share my life kind of almost warts and all, not everything, but I share a lot of it because I advocate sort of freedom and lifestyle businesses. So making it manageable. Always be clear. What's the goal of the message you're creating, and who's the audience? And the story will come to you then. Ultimately, why'd you tell the story, and how can it be used to inspire people? And I don't mean inspire them to run a marathon. Inspire them to just take action. Inspire them to look after themselves. Inspire them to move forward in their business or their life or whatever it is that you offer them. Inspire them to try something new. Inspire them to have some joy. Inspire them to reconnect with a partner. Whatever it is that you do, with that story, you should be inspiring them to take action. And every story should be establishing trust. At every step of the way, you're establishing trust. Be authentic, be yourself. Be vulnerable. Talk about your mistakes and your poor judgment. And tell stories which reveal who you really are. Because people buy people, they do not buy facts and figures. Okay? So the elements of a great story are very simple. There's got to be that clear beginning, middle and an end, not just a wash of grey and beige in the middle. Use emotion and conflict, that's the action part in the middle. Use that to elicit a response. Good, bad or indifferent, there has to be some kind of response. You need your reader or listener to think, to feel, to act differently than they did before you wrote that piece. That's your only job. Now, if you're delivering your content and your marketing via video, great. The response might be, oh my God, I love her, I need to go there. I need to try her out, I need to work with her. Or it could be, oh my God, she's driving me bananas, I can't stand her voice. Turn it off, move on. That's fine. Because remember, I can't help all the people all the time. So I want to get a clear yes or clear no. And clear no's are just as good as clear yeses. Okay? And the final takeaways. Just don't be afraid to put yourselves out there. That's what it's about, warts and all. Particularly on the peninsula. right? We're a big, happy family. I know it's changing and it's not the cute coastal getaway it used to be, but, you know, it is still a big, warm, fuzzy community. People know people, believe me. Don't underestimate who knows who. So do be careful what you say. If you're going to be slanderous, don't be. But don't be afraid to put yourself out there. Get out there and say who you are and why you stand out, because you know what? Probably your competitor's not. And that's awesome. That's a huge opportunity for you. Use stories, use your own stories, use those of customers to help position yourself and your value and sell your message without having to sell. Use clear story structure in the messaging and use your own voice and language. Don't copy anybody else's because it will sound fake. And the biggest compliment I got when I wrote my book was that someone who read it said, "I feel like I've taken you to bed with me." And I'm like, what? And they said, "I literally can hear you when I read it." And that was a huge compliment to me because I write exactly the way that I speak. So that when someone hears me here, when they read my blogs, when they read my Facebook, when they see me, I do a Just Ask Joe, which every Friday morning at 9:30 on my Facebook group, which is a free-for-all. Anyone can ask me anything. I'm exactly the same person all the time. And that's why people feel like they know me when they come and see me at an event or they meet me finally. And I'm like, oh, I don't know who you are. It's really nice though. But because there's a familiarity, and with the familiarity, you've already jumped over about 5 of those sales hurdles, those objections that you usually get. So don't be afraid to use your own voice and language. And that's kind of it from me today. Sorry about the hiccup in the middle. Are there any questions around this idea of storytelling for your business? Any thoughts around it? No?
I find I have to write reports and it's hard when you know, then I read them back and I think, oh, we babbled on about it.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Like,
Yes.
how much is too much? Because we
Yeah.
get caught up with compliance.
Yeah, okay.
Because we have to, you know, and that's a real kicker for me.
Yeah.
You're sitting there and you've got the client in front of you and they're going and they're looking at the price.
Straight to the price. Well, happily, one thing that may help you is you've all been given this thing.
Yeah.
So that's a little freebie for you guys today, which is edit your way to awesome writing. So I do believe that there's great writers, but I also believe that there are a lot of really great editors who sort of have the facade of being a great writer, because what happens is that most of us write stuff, we're too close to it, and then we just go, oh, have it, and we publish it, and it's rubbish.
Yeah.
Right? So the best way to get really great, succinct writing is to become a very good editor.
Okay.
Now, a second set of eyes is usually the best, but if you can't, this is a really great sort of 5-step process that will help you think about how you can reduce the babble, turn 10 words into 2.
Yeah.
You know, make sure you're talking directly to a person. In reports, the biggest challenge for people is that we kind of write a little bit ethereally. We talk about the greater, you know, the you with the capital Y and we as a collective. Just talk directly. You know, you, Mr. Client, need to hear this. I think this is your challenge. This is how I can help. And be really pointed. Because no one wants to wade through 50 pages going, where's the price? This is just rubbish. And you know, another thing to do, which I sometimes do, I don't get asked for proposals a lot with what I do, but I have my prices on my website. And I know people think that's weird, a lot of people, but I don't shy away from it, because if you can't afford me, don't make the first phone call. Okay? Because I'm not going to drop my pants just because you think you need a better price. But if I have to do a proposal, so for things like workshops, I did a recent workshop for land care for the Shire, and they wanted a proposal because government, they love that stuff. And up front, first page, here's the price. And they just, oh, there's the price, now here's the value. And I just went into, this is what you get, 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 this is what it means for you. At the very end I said, and this is who I am. But in a proposal, if people are doing this, looking for the price, put it up front. Don't be afraid, because it's not going to change if it's on page 11.
No.
If it's on page 1, it's on page 1. Okay, then they don't have to shuffle. And you can even say at the beginning of the appointment, if you'd like to go straight to the investment, call it an investment, not price, it's right there on page 1. Now let's talk through what you get for that.
Get it over with.
Get it over and done with. Be really open and honest. But editing is really, really important. And obviously when you write a Facebook post, you're not going to spend 3 hours editing it. There's no point. But the more you do this stuff, the better you get at it. And if you're writing a blog and it takes you 5 days, which it can do to start with, and you go back and you forth and what, it'll start to get shorter that time the more often you do it. And then once you've got a really great one, you just slice and dice that bugger and it goes out, and that's 20 different Facebook and Instagram posts right there for you. So it's about getting efficient with your content marketing and about making sure it all sounds similar, and the only way for it to sound similar is for you to write it, because it's your voice, and to just keep doing it, keep having a go at it. And you know, you'll get the yeses and the nos, but as I said, no's just as good an answer, because then you can focus on the yeses. Yeah? Cool. So you've got your awesome editing guide there. I also do have a really quick promo. If you're interested, I've got an amazing program, an 8-week program, which is starting actually next week on Tuesday mornings. There's a little, I don't know, Shannon, if it was printed on that last page or not. I can, oh yeah, except that it's a link. You can't see the link there. It's an 8-week program. Pardon?
I can email it.
Perfect, great. It's a fundamentals, content marketing fundamentals course, and basically you learn how to find your business voice, what's the language around it, how do you get your story out and make it relevant to your people, then how do you distribute that story across Instagram, LinkedIn, Facebook, email marketing, your website and blogging. And we do that over 8 weeks, 1 hour delivery of content each week, and then Q&A and homework throughout the week. It's a really cool program. Trish is actually starting with me next week, which is great. This is the 6th time I've run it, and you can't read those there, but I've had some really great success. Over and over and over, the investment has paid for itself with the participants who have gone through it, because they make one really great sale, and you know, they just get so much great feedback about it, because it's a really good fundamentals course for those who are sort of new to content marketing. So if you're interested in that, let me know. There's a special offer in the book today. Rhiannon's going to email it out to you, but we start Tuesday morning, and if you miss a week, it's okay, because it's all recorded. The other thing is my books are up the back if you want to grab one of those for $20. Okay, thank you so much.
Would you? I don't know. It's all
Oh,
right.
another question?
Yeah.
Oh.
No. It's
Oh.
fine. Come and see me. Really.
Okay. Thank you. Sorry, just
Overtalk people.